Greetings from Union Smack headquarters. I am the Maniac Matt Tennant here, as always. And this week, even though we have our NXT UK Omnibus, episodes 42 to 45, we'll be looking at and reviewing in just a tickety-boo. This is no ordinary issue of Union Smack. Issue? I should have said edition, shouldn't I? We'll go with issue. It's easier than me going back and editing it all out. This is no ordinary issue of Union Smack, because this is in fact our 2-year anniversary. This is the show that will celebrate Union Smack being 2 years old this month. We can't thank you even enough. We can't even begin to, tell you how much it means that you've stuck with us. I may say a few words at the end of this podcast, depending on how much time we've got. But I know Travis would have loved to have been with us to celebrate our two-year anniversary. Unfortunately, he couldn't be, but I am assured that his technical issues are all sorted and he's ready to record and he's ready to go again for the next NXT UK Omnibus edition. So the band will be back together shortly. Before we get into all of that, as always, you can find me on Twitter at The Perfect Tenant. You can find Travis on Twitter at The Hibiki TMD. You can find our merchandise, Union Smack shirts, Hibiki TMD shirts. You can find all that on unionsmack.bigcartel.com. And of course, subscribe to the channel. Give Travis some love because his content is amazing and he deserves it. Now, we usually start off with the news, but I'm looking at my format here, and there is only one sort of piece of news, so we'll go over that. It's been a very, very slow fortnight. There's been very little news NXT UK wise, especially with all the hype and drama surrounding AEW Double or Nothing, which was a fantastic fucking show. So nothing. There's been very little. The only thing that we really have to mention, because it is sort of NXT UK based, is the WWE 24/7 Championship. Now, it was said when this title was revealed by Mick Foley that it was for all brands. It was for all brands, NXT UK included. Keep this fucking monstrosity away from this brand. In a month where I am just about done with this morally bankrupt company, following Money in the Bank and everything else that's come to light in the media, the hideous booking, etc. This was just the cherry on top of a dirty shit sandwich for me. You couldn't make the roster, especially your main roster, you couldn't make the main roster any more of a joke. You have to introduce a title that's just awful. It's awful looking. It's going to be booked awfully. It's a title for jobbers, as we've seen. And you've got cretins on social media. And if you're one of them, then just go away. Saying that it's fun and it's the best thing to happen to WWE in a long time. Go fuck yourselves. Seriously, go fuck yourselves. It's not the best thing to happen to WWE in a long time. And it's not fun. It really isn't fun. It's not even like the Hardcore Championship either, which I've seen it compared to recently. People going, oh, well, it's got the same values as the Hardcore Championship. And it'll be no, it actually hasn't. The Hardcore Championship had genuine matches, which made it somewhat prestigious and, it fit the Attitude Era. This doesn't. This is just a title created by the USA Network, who I'm hearing pressured Vince McMahon to create it to make Raw, more fun. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment. It's a ratings grab which isn't working. And I'm sorry to disillusion you all, and you can disagree with me if you like, that's absolutely fine. There's nothing fun about it, unless your tiny little brain thinks making reputable wrestlers like, I don't know, who's competed for, Robert Roode, Cedric Alexander, and Noam Dar, just running around like fucking chickens with their asses on fire, chasing a stupid cunt in a blonde wig. It devalues them. It devalues the brand, as far as I can see, and it makes them look like morons. And is making reputable wrestlers look like morons what you consider fun? I mean, if it is, then you know, you've probably been watching 2 or 3 years and haven't been watching this company long enough, like, you know, me and Travis and other fans and YouTubers have, to see its, you know, steady decline. But you're making your talent look like a laughing stock. Wrestlers who could actually help this company get better in the ring, put on better matches. You're just booking them like they're a joke. And you wonder why your ratings are in the fucking toilet. It's sad and it's pathetic. And I'm so glad I don't watch this company anymore. I've not watched Raw since January 2018. I've not watched SmackDown since about the same time. I watched every pay-per-view up to Money in the Bank, but I refuse to watch anymore after the Brock Lesnar rubbish, and it's just, I'm done with it. I'm absolutely done with it. And please, just don't come at me on Twitter saying it's fun, you know, you don't know how to have fun. It's bullshit. It's absolute fucking bullshit. The fun should come from the wrestling itself, from what you see in the ring. NXT TakeOver is always fun. There's none of this crap in it. AEW Double or Nothing was fun because of the wrestling. You know, the wrestling itself should be fun. You shouldn't need to create this whole rigmarole of a comedy act just to make people think that what you're doing is fun. If people don't think your in-ring product is fun, then work on that. Do not work on devaluing wrestlers with a title that's not going to mean anything in 6 months' time. I'm here to watch professional wrestling, like a lot of you, like a lot of other YouTubers who have shot this down, like a lot of people who actually, you know, love this for some fucking reason. The WWE apologists who love this title. We're all here to watch professional wrestling. And if I want to laugh, if I want, you know, if I want to watch somebody run around in a wig, I'll put Benny Hill on. Or I'll put, one of my favourite comedies on. Instead of creating a title that no one gives a fuck about, how about you concentrate on your writing and your booking and your in-ring product before you concentrate on shit like this? Absolute fucking garbage of the highest degree. And, you know, saying that, I've seen Travis's tweets. He quite likes it. So I'm sure this is going to be one of the very few things we disagree on this podcast. But for me, absolute fucking garbage. Get that title away from NXT UK. I do not want to see or hear of another NXT UK talent chasing somebody down a hallway on SmackDown for it. Keep it away. If Triple H has got any fucking sense about him, he'll refuse to have it on either NXT UK or regular NXT. And I've gone off on that bit. I didn't mean to do 8 minutes, but you know what? I've just about had it with this company. Absolutely had it. Morally bankrupt cretins. And that's after 30 years. And, you know, you ask anyone who knows me, I've been a WWE loyalist all my life. Literally all my life. But they have slowly and carefully killed my passion for professional wrestling. And if I'm being honest, I can get NXT UK elsewhere, but I subscribe to the network now solely for NXT UK and all the classic content. If it wasn't for any of that, I wouldn't bother. So that's the end of the news. I am going to get a drink, because as always my voice is cracking because I talk too fast, probably far too loud. And we will be back after this short break with NXT UK Episodes 42, 43, 44, and of course 45. And somewhere in there, the big rematch for the WWE United Kingdom Championship between Walter and this man, the Bruiserweight, Pete Dunne.
I'm the Bruiserweight Pete Dunne, and you're listening to the Union Smack podcast.
Thank you very much to Pete Dunne for doing that for Union Smack. Just one of the many highlights over the past 2 years. And welcome back, everyone. We are ready to crack on with this NXT UK Omnibus review. I know these usually come out about an hour and a half a piece, so I will try and rattle through it as quick as possible. I know you've all got better things to do, and there's nothing worse than when a podcast goes longer than the thing you're doing while listening to it. So let's try and rattle through this. NXT UK Episode 42 begins with Sid Scala somewhere backstage. He is there apparently on behalf of NXT UK General Manager Johnny Saint, and he is here to announce that in 4 weeks' time there will be a fatal four-way qualifying match to determine a new number one contender to the United Kingdom Championship. This will consist of four matches, the winner of each match going through to the fatal four-way qualifier in 4 weeks' time. He tells us 8 men have been handpicked for the chance to qualify, and it begins tonight. We've got some questions about this coming up, don't worry. We come into a very, very good Glasgow crowd, and after New York, it's a sight to behold. Just some people who love British wrestling. We didn't get any of that in New York. Yes, the setup is identical to Coventry, almost in every single way, but for me, that only helps the look of the product, because Coventry was the best leg of tapings we've ever had so far. We kick off with tag team action, Mustache Mountain versus The Hunt, and The Hunt in matching attire, which is nice to see for once. Not enough teams do that these days. Trent Seven hits a low-pay torpedo, which looks wonderful, and The Hunt, I have to say here, looked like an absolute threat to everyone else in the tag team division. I don't know whether they put special effort in to look better, whether it was Mustache Mountain, who really elevated them to a level where they could be believable challengers for the title. But Mike Hitchman, who I've sung the praises of on this podcast countless times, he's such a firecracker. He's better than a tag team role, but if this is the best he's ever going to get, then so be it. At least he's making the most of it. Tyler Bate versus Hitchman in the middle of this is a wonderful little few minutes. And I like that Mustache Mountain looked like they struggled to beat The Hunt. Again, it just goes back to making Hitchman and Primate J Melrose look creditable. If they're making Mustache Mountain struggle to beat them, then just imagine what they could, do if they went against the grizzled young veterans. That's the vibe we got here, and I'm glad Mustache Mountain took the time to really sell The Hunt, because right now The Hunt aren't anything in NXT UK. It's going to take a good 6 to 10 months to really get them over and sell them, and this was a cracking job, as is their finisher, which I'm 100% sure we've not heard a name for yet. If we have, then it's passed me by. But what it basically is, it's a take on Grand Amplitude. If you remember Grand Amplitude that American Alpha used to do, it's basically that one throws the other up in the air, and whoever it seems to be catches them in a backdrop. It looked very, very good. I wish they'd come up with a name for it. Double bop and bang, lovely. And Mustache Mountain win with a Dragon Suplex clothesline combo, which again, no name for. We're 7 months into this show now, and Mustache Mountain have been using this finisher. I believe they used it at the Royal Albert Hall in June last year. So well over a year they've been using this on this product, and there's still no name for it. I'd like to see, tag team wrestling is alive and well here and in NXT, but I'd just like to see it taken a tiny bit more seriously. When you're watching tag team wrestling, if a commentator shouts out a tag team's finishing move, it's like, yeah, that's classy, I can get behind that. But right now it's Nigel McGuinness is having to just go Dragon Suplex, clothesline combo, Burning Hammer, Flying Knee combo, and it brings it down slightly for me. I just want a name. Just give us an all-about name if you're going to carry on using this. But great energetic opener. Highly, highly recommend that match. We are taken backstage to Amir Jordan, who is being helped through the back by Kenny Williams and a referee. It comes to light that he's been attacked and supposedly injured. I'm not sure whether Jordan was actually injured. There was nothing in the news, and I scour the news thoroughly for the book. So he's helped into a trainer's office, and that puts the Grizzled Young Veterans versus Kenny Williams and Amir Jordan Tag Team Championship match, which is meant to main event this episode, in doubt. Not that that's a bad thing, because, you know, who the fuck wants to see Amir Jordan? Next up, we have our first Fatal 4-Way qualifier match. We have Joe Coffey versus Flash Morgan Webster. And before I get into this, what the fuck has Flash Morgan Webster done to deserve a spot? We were told by Sid Scarlett at the opening of this episode that 8 men had been handpicked on their own merits to fight for a place in the Fatal 4-Way match in 4 weeks' time. Right? So tell me what merits Flash Morgan Webster was picked on. Joe Coffey is understandable. He's been in the main event with Pete Dunne on the first ever NXT UK takeover. He's rarely lost a match one-on-one. They've lost a few tag team matches. They lost the one to Dunne and Walter in Coventry. But Joe Coffey has been NXT UK's main heel since the very beginning. He warrants a place in the qualifiers and in the Fatal 4-Way. But Flash Morgan Webster, and I went back and checked this thoroughly before I wrote it, and I put the exact same thing in the book. Flash Morgan Webster has not won a match, single or tag team, since, I believe, December 17th or 18th in NXT UK. That is a fucking long time. That is a ridiculously long time. Singles, he's been impressive in what he's done, but there's been no victories, so that doesn't warrant a place here. His tag team with Mark Andrews hasn't really gone anywhere at all. Again, it feels like you've just thrown Flash Morgan Webster in here to fill a spot, and it cheapens it. And I'll have the same thing to say later on as well. As for the match, I mean, how many times have we seen this in its various forms? We're now retreading old ground, and it is getting a tiny bit boring. Flash Morgan Webster, Mark Andrews, Ashton Smith / Travis Banks were feuding with Gallus right at the beginning of NXT UK's lifespan. We've seen Coffey versus Webster in tag teams. You know, it's just getting monotonous to see the same people pitted against each other now. You could have found anyone else who would probably have warranted a spot rather than Flash Morgan Webster. Everything Joe Coffey did here got a cheer. Of course it did. It's Scotland. We expected that. He was dominant throughout the match. But, you know, credit where credit's due. Webster put up a hell of a fight. Hell of an inspiring fight, actually. He dealt with the crowd well as well. The crowd jeered him. They almost booed him out of the building. But he dealt with them well. His high cross body, which sent them both over the top rope, was very, very good. Coffey countered Shadows Over Malice with raised knees. If you're confused about what that is Webster's Swanton Bomb, or Senton Bomb, depending on what you prefer to call it. And Coffey wins with all the best for the bells. It was a good match. I'm not going to lie and say it wasn't, or shoot it down, needlessly. It was a good match. But I don't want to see these two fight each other ever again. We've seen this on and off for 7 months. It wasn't, what? Let me think. January? Might have been February when it was shown. We saw the Coffey brothers versus Webster and Andrews in Phoenix. So please just keep these two apart from now on. If you have to turn Webster heel, turn Webster heel. I don't really care. You have to do something to make people care about him now, because he's becoming a jobber, and that's not where he needs to be at all. After the bout, Gallus joined Joe Coffey in the ring, This is another little nitpick I have, okay? There's going to be a few throughout this review. These are the hometown heroes. You know, they come from Scotland. Scotland loved them. It's NXT UK's first time in Scotland, so naturally they're going to get a massive reaction. The crowd are hyped to see them, and yet it felt like they sent Gallus out there to try and turn the crowd against them. I'm not going to go through the whole promo, but they said things like, "This isn't your kingdom, it's our kingdom. This is our town," etc. And it felt like a promo that was written purposely to turn the Scots against Gallus. Now, this worked in Liverpool with Zach Gibson perfectly. When Zach Gibson berated the fans and, Liverpool people just went, "Fuck you." But Scotland is a different beast altogether. Scotland are fiercely loyal to their performers, their teams, etc. So I wish NXT UK and WWE as a whole, if I'm honest, would just stop trying to turn the hometown against the hometown hero. It looks really bad and quite petty, if I'm being totally honest. These people paid to see, just let the hometown fans, have fun with their hometown hero. We never know when NXT UK is going to Scotland again, so just let them have that moment. This promo also featured a build, a hype, if you like, for the Dave Mastiff versus Wolfgang Fatal 4-Way qualifier, which was to come in this episode, and we'll get into that more in a little bit. We were given a video package next for Pete Dunne preparing for Walter, training in the PC, and whoever he was training with, whoever he was sparring with, I felt very sorry for. So if you saw the way he snapped them fingers, dear God. A highlight package was shown next for Ilya Dragunov. Clips mostly from his time in WXW and over here in Progress. Again, very well done video package to hype him, and we're told he's coming next week. That will be episode 43. Nina Samuels versus Casey Owens was up next. There wasn't much to this. Let's be brutally honest. This is the beginning and the end, if I'm being honest, of Nina Samuels' build to take on Toni Storm for the UK Women's Championship, which we will cover at the end of this review, I believe. They're doing a very good job of building Nina Samuels as a threat to Toni Storm with the way she talks and the way she portrays herself. The problem is that she's only beaten no-names, She's beaten people who don't really matter in NXT UK. I think she beat Killer Kelly at some point, maybe. Maybe I'm making that up. But she's beat Charlie Morgan, who means nothing to the roster. She's just not a one and done, but she's not a full-time member. She's used, as enhancement talent. So I think the Nina Samuels train would have benefited from going through a few major stations first. That's just my opinion, though. Apart from that, I do like how they've built Nina Samuels. I'm gravitating towards her as a major heel, but now we've got the likes of Ginny and obviously Jazzy Gabbett, who made an appearance during these tapings as well. I think, sadly, Nina Samuels is going to take a back seat. As for the match itself, Casey Owens is another enhancement talent. We saw her in Blackpool. She puts up a decent fight here. Looks plucky in her fight back, let's say. But, it was a 2-minute enhancement match, as Samuels wins with what she's now calling the Nina Garoshi. It's its official name. And that's it. After the match, Radzi comes into the ring and interviews her. He asks if her eyes are still on Toni Storm. Where else would they be, you fucking moron? And Nina Samuels, it's a very good promo that she gives. She starts by praising Toni Storm and, saying how she loves Toni Storm's work, admires her, etc. And then she just takes a complete U-turn, and it's very well done, where she accuses Toni Storm of loving her lifestyle so much that she left her single mother behind in Australia. And, I mean, usually it'd just be, God, you're going down that route, are you, to build a feud? But it suits Nina Samuel's character, this posh, prim, sort of actress wannabe line dancer who thinks she's better than she is, picking on the best. So I like where they went with it. And as we'll see in later episodes, it fired Toni Storm up really well. Dave Mastiff is backstage on media duties, and he talks about Wolfgang and his qualifier for the Fatal 4-Way against Wolfgang, which is next week, actually, on the next episode, I believe. I said it was on this episode, but it's not. It is next week. This is the shortest thing you'll see Dave Mastiff do. There was nothing really to it. He runs down Wolfgang, he runs down Gallus, and then he leaves, and Kaylee Ray comes in, and she berates Nina Samuels for, playing the game. She claps her a bit so she can see what she's doing, but she tells her she's not here to wait for her opportunity and to pick her moment. She's here to make sure no one in NXT UK forgets the name Kaylee Ray again. I think, given all the evidence and what's passed, I think Kaylee Ray is probably going to be the next NXT UK Women's Champion. Toni Storm is obviously outgrowing the brand. It would make sense to have Kaylee Ray take the title and then have Ginny take it from her and have them two war for the rest of the year into 2020, especially with the Jazzy Gabbert thing going on, which we'll get to in the next episode. We're given highlights of Ligero and Jordan Devlin, and we're told that their qualifying match is next week, as is Dave Mastiff versus Wolfgang. That is also told through a highlight package. Both highlight packages are very good. They do the job they're intended to do. We're ready for the main event, only we're not, because the grizzled young veterans come out for the title defence, knowing what's happened to Amir Jordan backstage. And Zach Gibson sounds off. He says he's heard what's happened to Amir Jordan, and sadly they're ready to fight, but because of the injury, there'll be no title match tonight. Kenny Williams comes out, and he basically accuses grizzled young veterans of injuring Amir Jordan. They say they didn't. Now, what I find very interesting is that I know they're heels, etc., but if you've watched Zach Gibson over the past year or so, he's usually someone who'd take responsibility if he'd injured someone. Now, don't get me wrong, they could have injured Amir Jordan, get that story out the way, get Mustache Mountain back, on the title trail, and then Jordan and Williams could come back later and win the titles. However, I'm hoping that Kenny Williams is going to turn out to be Amir Jordan's attacker, and that's that team done. I know I'm not in the the process of splitting teams up. I want a strong tag division. I just don't like Amir Jordan. I think Kenny Williams is much better. He's much better than either Amir Jordan or a tag team role. And I know they're not going to give him a singles role, at least not a high profile one. So maybe a tag team is better for him right now. However, I think teaming him with Noam Dar, which is what they did here, Noam Dar comes out at the end of this big speech and is Amir Jordan's replacement to team with Kenny Williams. I think because Noam Dar's back in NXT UK full time, he is still leaving 205 Live, by the way. I know he made his return recently. But I think, that pair, they've fought around the world together. They know each other inside out. And I think because Noam Dar isn't really going anywhere as a heel, if you turn Kenny Williams heel, they could make a great fucking tag team. Otherwise, you're just going to have both of them either wallowing in the, in the undercard, There's no Dar. He's not challenging for the UK title again anytime soon. And there's no mid-card title or mid-card feud really waiting for him, apart from what they've already done with Mark Andrews and what we'll see them do in a bit. So I would pair a heel Kenny Williams with a heel Noam Dar. Call them whatever you want to call them. And let them have a good run in the tag team division. Because I would much prefer to see that than Amir Jordan. So, the main event is Grizzled Young Veterans versus Kenny Williams and Noam Dar for the NXT UK Tag Team Championships. Great brawl to begin this match. It's just like there's no handshakes, there's no lockups, it's just a all-out brawl. It's like, you attack my partner, let's get this on. You've dodged us for too long. Grizzled Young Veterans, show their ring nous, if you like, by working over Noam Dar's knee. Because obviously, it was the knee that was injured in Coventry. They hit a lovely adaptation of their backbreaker slingshot knee to the floor, where James Drake comes over the top rope with a slingshot knee. Only Zach Gibson has Noam Dar in a knee breaker, or ankle breaker, depending on what you call it. Very nicely done. I love the ring presence of the Grizzled Young Veterans. They show it here by... Just as Noam Dar is going for the tag, his leg's done, he can't walk on it anymore. Kenny Williams is there, reaching out the hand, and suddenly Noam Dar goes for the tag, and Williams is pulled from the apron. That's brilliant storytelling. And it's something you don't see a lot of anymore, especially on WWE's main roster. Kenny Williams springboards all over the place when he does finally get in. He has a springboard knee to Zach Gibson, wrecking ball drop kick, which looks amazing. And he also does a skin the cat. I'm sure everyone knows what that is, where they pull themselves in over the top rope, upside down, into a swinging DDT on James Drake. Really, really good stuff. And then he even does another one on the outside of the ring, where he comes off the barricade. He springboards off the barricade into a back elbow onto Zach Gibson. Lovely stuff. Absolutely lovely stuff. Noam Dar forgets to sell the leg at points, but you can forgive that minor little detail here. The babyfaces fight back in their home country is inspired. The champagne super knee bar, lovely stuff. Zach Gibson and James Drake sell perfectly well for their challengers here. Lovely moment where the Grizzled Young Veterans are put in a double knee bar and ankle lock. Great drama. Zach Gibson drags himself to Noam Dar, who has the champagne super knee bar on James Drake, and Zach Gibson is in the ankle lock. So Gibson drags himself to Noam Dar and then turns and kicks Kenny Williams into Noam Dar. It's very, very well done, this. Honestly, you really have to watch this match to appreciate how well it's done. All four take each other out with a barrage of kicks, knees, back and forth. It's blink and you'll miss it. And then Noam Dar makes the critical mistake. He sacrifices himself for Kenny Williams. He pushes Williams out the way and takes a flying ticket to ride from Zach Gibson. Then Drake takes out Noam Dar on the outside. Kenny Williams is left alone. Lovely, lovely little 30-40 second fight back by Kenny Williams, where he knows his partner's done. He knows there's no one else to come to his rescue, but he fights back anyway. And for a moment, he makes you think he'll do it. But Zach Gibson, helter-skelter, James Drake 450 splash, done and dusted. What a match this was. It wasn't as good as Grizzled Young Veterans versus Mustache Mountain at TakeOver, but it was very close. Enjoyed it immensely. I did go on the internet afterwards, not after this, after the tapings in Glasgow, and a few people were actually surprised that they didn't give Williams and Dar the titles in their hometown. But I think this was the right decision. The story is really Williams and Jordan needing to take the titles from the Grizzled Young Veterans, not Williams and, a makeshift partner. So that, I think this is the proper ending. If they want to give the story, a round off, a cap off, then have Jordan and Williams win the title if you have to. I said this last time. As long as it's a 2-week reign, I'm fine with it. I don't agree with Kenny Williams being pinned because Noam Dar is basically the standing of the match. And Kenny Williams is going to go on and probably challenge again for the titles. So I would have had Noam Dar pinned. That would have made, and sorry I'm babbling, that would have made more sense heading into his rematch with Mark Andrews and what came out of that. But again, minor gripes. Great main event. Very, very good episode. I would suggest you go and check this out, with the exception of the Nina Samuels squash in the middle. Bookended by two very, very enjoyable matches. So that is episode 42. And yeah, check it out. It's one of the better ones. The Glasgow tapings from this look like they were going to be, right up there with Coventry. And we will be back in just a minute with episode 43. NXT UK episode 43 began with several graphics. We got a graphic for Ligero versus Jordan Devlin for the Fatal 4-Way qualifier, which will happen later in this episode, and also a graphic for Dave Mastiff versus Wolfgang, another Fatal 4-Way qualifier, which we will also go over in this episode. We began properly with an actual match, Piper Niven versus Jamie Hayter. If you've not seen Jamie Hayter on the UK Indies, I strongly suggest you check her out. Great wrestler. Good look as well. She's done quite a few things, here and there. So go and check her out. Give her some support. And I'm sure this isn't the last we've seen of her in NXT UK, because she could really become something with a lot of investment. Of course, there was massive reaction for Piper Niven in her hometown of Glasgow. And she's much more animated here than we've ever seen her before. She's jumping around, she's cheering, she's the bubbly personality that can hug you, but will also kill you if you get on the wrong side. This is a squash match, unfortunately for Jamie Hayter. After maybe 50 seconds of exchanging chin locks, etc., Niven hits her with a headbutt, a flying crossbody, a cannonball, and a Michinoku driver for the victory, and that is it. It's a great dominant performance as well by Piper Niven, and I also like that Jamie Hayter didn't get in too much on Niven, because she's meant to be this huge Scottish dominant babyface monster who's going to take out Rhea Ripley and send Rhea Ripley on her way up to NXT or the main roster, depending on what they do with her. So I like that Niven was dominant here. Tony Storm is on media duties earlier in the day. A very pissed off Tony Storm. I haven't seen Tony Storm act this well for... Actually, it might be the first time. It might actually be the first time here. She comments on what Nina Samuels said last week about her leaving her single mother to pursue fame and fortune. And this is the standard response you'd expect. She says she's going to kick her ass. She wants a title match. She wants to put the gold on the line, to show Nina Samuels who's who. Don't bring my family into it. The usual stick you get. And she ends it by saying that if she wants her 15 minutes of fame, she's got it. Now, like every Tony Storm promo ever, if you've seen Tony Storm, and this is the only criticism I've got of her, she's beautiful, she's sexy, she's a fantastic wrestler. But the only criticism I've got of her is her promo work. And it's the same with every promo. She starts off really well. Like here, she started off really determined and just really pissed off. And this wasn't the bubbly Tony Storm. This was the the serious champion, Toni Storm. You want to come at me? I will ruin you. That was the attitude she was giving off. But this descended into a cringe fest at the end. Now, if you've never seen the Toni Storm promo, she does this thing towards the end of almost every interview or promo she does, where she does a false laugh, and it's the sort of false laugh that makes you just sink into yourself and go, "Oh, I can't watch this anymore." Can I just say before I carry on, if you hear crunching in the background, that's my guinea pig eating crackers. So ignore that. I wish Toni Storm would cut this out of her promos. I wish someone in NXT UK would look at it and just say, just tone it down a little bit. We've mentioned this before. Apart from that, it's very good. Just stop the overreacting. If you're going to be serious, be serious. Look down the lens and say, Nina Samuels, bitch, I'm coming for you. That's all that's needed. But what do we know? Sid Scala enters the building and is accosted by our unknown, unseen interviewer. He asks Sid Scala about Pete Dunne versus Walter next week. And Sid Scala, for some reason, he goes, he agrees with them. Yeah, it is the biggest match in NXT UK history, but I'm more excited about tonight. Way to sell your world title down the river, Sid. He should have been promoting this to the hills, and I know they wanted to, make this episode 43, seem a bit more important, but come on. The way Sid Scala passed this off, it was just like, yeah, world title match. Yeah, seen it before. I'm more interested in what's going on tonight, actually. You don't really need to tune into that next week, because we all know Walter's going to fucking retain. I would have liked to have seen a bit more emphasis on Dunne versus Walter. Yes, it is the biggest match in our history, and link that into the Fatal 4-Way qualifier. He didn't do that. He just passed it off like it was nothing. Luckily, Cassius Ohno is on hand to lighten up this segment and make things mean something. He accosts Sid Scala, and he says, basically, I see there's 8 men handpicked for this qualifier, but I'm not one of them. Why not? And I want it sorted out. And I love everything about Cassius Ohno. Watched him on NXT. I've seen him on the Indies. This Cassius Ohno could be the funniest Cassius Ohno we've ever seen. He's lively, he's chirpy, he's wonderfully condescending without, putting the overtones on it and making it too much. He calls Sid Scala Psycho Sid and calls him Savvy Sid, which is, of course, what Scala competed under on the UK Indies. He basically demands that he sort it out, that he wants to be in the qualifier, he wants to be one of the 8 men, etc., etc. And Sid tells him that he'll speak to Johnny Saint when he arrives, and he'll get back to Cassius Ohno next week. Ligero versus Jordan Devlin in a Fatal 4-Way qualifier is up next. And the commentators make out that Ligero is on a losing streak, but they clearly forgot that he won at Worlds Collide, where he competed for and as part of NXT UK in that triple threat match. I think it was against Grand Metalik and Albert Hardy Jr., I think. I don't think it was Lince Dorado. Great match. Mostly, I will say that. I'm not going to hype this to the hills. I know it's Jordan Devlin, one of the finest we have in NXT UK. Same with Ligero. But I feel like this was held back. Like they held something back on this. There was a botch right at the beginning that could have ended Jordan Devlin's career. Ligero botched a code red. Something terrible. It looked absolutely fucking hideous. And Jordan Devlin landed on his head. And how he did not break his neck, I will never know. It looked horrendous. I watched this back in slow motion 2 or 3 times. And every time I watched it back, it looked like he'd almost killed Jordan Devlin. Terrible. I would, if I was on the production team, I would have cut this out of the recording because it made Ligero look awful. Apart from that, decent match, which should have gone longer. Ligero stuns Jordan Devlin with, fast start, monkey flip, drop kick to the outside, which all looked fluid and nice. Devlin goes to the back. Obviously, Ligero's a luchador. He can't do anything if the back's not playing ball. Lovely inverted backbreaker, rams him into the apron. And Devlin shows some lovely technical ability here. Kneeling armbar, exposes the ribs, strain on the back, perfect. Ligero fights back, and I always say it's a spirited fight back, but you really have to watch it to realise that it actually is. He comes back, he's still selling, the spine and the back injury, but lovely rolling crucifix pin combo, super kick, flying splash, which Devlin counters with knees, and the end. The end was absolute perfection. I've not seen a better end to a match on NXT UK television this year. Actually, maybe the Spanish fly through the table in Coventry. Maybe that was a better ending than this. But what basically happens here is the injury plays into the finale. Ligero goes for his C4L Tornado DDT finisher. Devlin counters, kicks him in the back while he's still on the ropes, and then just yanks him off of the second rope straight into the Devlin side for the win. Absolutely lovely. And if Jordan Devlin isn't UK champion by the end of the year, I will eat my hat. And as you've seen by the pictures, it's a pretty big hat. I am glad they're pushing Devlin like this. I'm glad he's sort of bordering the face-heel divide now. He's still the heel that you love to hate, the cocky Irish prick. No offence to any Irishmen out there. We love you on Union Smack. But he's also the man that, if Pete Dunne isn't going to get it done, Jordan Devlin's the man that you want to see topple Walter for the title. Rads is in. Again, this bloke's like fucking poverty. He won't go away. He's always where you don't want him to be. He asked Jordan Devlin that he's the second man to qualify for the Fatal 4-Way #1 contenders match. And that's as far as it gets. Jordan Devlin cuts him off. He said he doesn't need a qualifier. He should already be #1 contender. And that he doesn't care who the other men in the match are, because whatever way you shuffle the deck, whether you're the Joker or the King, you still fall short to the ace. And I love Jordan Devlin's promos. I love him as much as his in-ring style, and I really, really hope they don't piss the bed with him. If you don't know what you have, then you should not be in this job at all. Next up was a video package highlighting Walter as he prepares to defend the United Kingdom Championship against Pete Dunne on the next episode. That will be episode 43. Very well done video package. I'm not going to go through everything that Walter says here because it's a lot, and his Austrian accent made it very hard to understand. I had to go through it 2 or 3 times to really get the transcript down. But he basically, the gist of it is, he believes there's more pressure on the champion than the challenger, and he goes into his match with Pete Dunne. He's glad that he brings the best out of Pete, and he will be just as prepared as Pete Dunne is next week. Very well done. It paints him in the light of a strong champion who's willing to take on any and all comers. And where this leads, if you haven't seen it already, is pure perfection. We are shown Ilyana Dragunov warming up backstage, and we are informed he's next, but not before. Mustache Mountain are shown backstage in another interview. And do you know what? I've got a gripe about these interviews. First off, they talk about Walter and Pete Dunne for the championship. Tyler Bates says this is potentially / possibly the biggest rematch in NXT UK history. And then Trent Seven does something weird. Trent Seven, he sort of brushes it off. It's like, yeah, it's possibly the biggest rematch in NXT UK history, But as long as we get our rematch, I don't really care. And this obviously isn't the beginning of a Trent Seven heel turn, but it's weird how they pass him off. It's like, Pete Dunne's our brother, he's our friend, but I don't really care as long as we get our title match. That's the gist of this. However, I'm starting to get a little bit bored with the Mustache Mountain interviews because Tyler Bate always looks like a deer caught in the headlights when he's talking. And Trent Seven always sounds like a fact machine. Like he's recapping the past of what's happened. And if you don't know it by now, then go back and look. Because I don't want every Mustache Mountain promo or interview to be just a history lesson. And they also have this weird thing where they interrupt each other. Like Tyler Bates goes to say something, and then Trent Seven just talks over the top of him. And that startles Tyler Bate to a point where he's not sure whether to begin his line again, just carry on, or stand there with a vacant expression on his face. They've got to do better with these Mustache Mountain interviews. Really, really have. Ilya Dragunov versus Jack Stars. This lasts about as long as a good piss. This is obviously done to get Dragunov over. Jack Stars was Walter's first opponent too. He is fully enhancement talent, even though he's got more in the tank than this. There isn't much to it. Dragunov's music is the best thing. My God, the fucking music of this bloke, they've done wonders with it. If you haven't heard it, either go back and watch this match, it'll take you 5 minutes, or look it up on YouTube. Great, great entrance music. Dragunov clothesline, chops, and he just takes what Jack Star throws at him, and he shakes it off, and he looks like a cross between a mad fucking German scientist and a zombie creation. And he wins with what he calls the Torpedo Moscow. That's it, job done. Utterly dominant, looked wholly impressive, and it will be interesting to see whether they add Dragunov to Walter's little alliance that is on its way. So, looking forward to that. Radzi, hey! Fucking bloke. Is backstage with Mark Andrews and Noam Dar. This is another long, talky segment. They recap what happened in Coventry, the injury to Noam Dar, the partial injury to Mark Andrews, which I can confirm was just a concussion, despite what WWE.com tried to sell you. Noam Dar says that, he's solid beyond belief and that he may have made fun of Mark Andrews and Radzi and said some bad things to them, that he just wants to be in the best place with the best competition, give him the best matches to the fans. Mark Andrews is allowed to speak again, though God knows why. He is hideous on the microphone. Absolutely horrible. It is a travesty that we are 7 months into NXT UK now, and they're still allowing him on a microphone. Just get it away from his face. They shake hands, wish the best man to win, and Mark Andrews walks away. Noam Dar is left to watch him, and there's just that slight little heelish look on Noam Dar's face to say that I will do whatever it takes to beat you this time. Killer Kelly versus Xia Brookside was up next, and while this went 2 minutes maybe, the main plus here was Xia Brookside is a very good technical wrestler when they give her the chance to be. This is all technical exchanges, finding ways to escape each other's wrist lock, head scissors, etc. The main point here, and the main plus for me, is Xia Brookside did nothing childish. There was no skipping around the ring. There was none of that bullshit that we saw her, do in that promo in New York. So, hopefully, that was just a one-off lapse of concentration. Let's call it. Lapse of taste. Whatever. This match is interrupted by Ginny, who comes out. She's not dressed to compete. She stops in the aisle. She points to the screen. And out comes Jazzy Gabbert to make her NXT UK debut. Jazzy Gabbert gets a lot of hate. People don't like her as a wrestler. They've compared her to China. I've seen a couple of people compare her to Nicole Bass. If you've not seen Nicole Bass, here's a picture of her. She's a very big, I think she's German. I'm pretty sure she's German. A very big German woman who is very dominant. I don't mind what I've seen of Jazzy Gabbert so far, but if she's gonna fit in with the Tony Storms and the Ginnies and the Killer Kellys and the Piper Nivens, Rhea Ripleys, etc., she's got a lot of work to do. There's only so far she's going to be able to go off of the power game. You know, off of the 2-minute squashes, off of the break you in half with 3 moves. So hopefully they're going to work on that at the Performance Centre. Here, she got into the ring. Killer Kelly just left Xia Brookside alone. She was like, bitch, I ain't tangling with that. She left her alone. Credit to Xia Brookside and actually the booking team here. They made Xia Brookside look like a bully killer again. She actually took on Jazzy Gabbert. She didn't get far, but she took a shot. Gabbert dropped her with a Dominator, and that was the end of that. Ginny and Gabbert stood together in the ring. New team, new faction. This will help Ginny immensely. This is so going to be the Triple H China, the Shawn Michaels Diesel pairing of NXT UK. And I believe it's going to lead to a Ginny Championship victory. And then at some point down the line, Gabbert will turn on Ginny and take the title from her when Ginny is ready to move on also. We are informed via Johnny Saint's Twitter, because we all love Twitter. The wrestling community on Twitter is a bunch of retards mostly. But Johnny Saint's Twitter tells us that it will be Toni Storm versus Nina Samuels in 2 weeks for the NXT UK Women's Championship. The main event is the next qualifying match for the Fatal 4-Way. It is Dave Mastiff versus Wolfgang, and what a travesty. Dear God Almighty. I think when I writ great English there. I think when I wrote this up for the book, it came out to about 4 minutes, this match. 4 to 5 minutes, somewhere in between there. Obviously, there's a great reception for Wolfgang. It's a pro-Gallus crowd. Dave Mastiff gets jeered no end, just like Flash Morgan Webster did against Joe Coffey last week. And weirdly, they waste no time in going at it. You know, it's a brawl from the beginning, which is fine considering that they've had, cross lines, spoken words. They nearly came to blows in New York. But this was all go from the beginning that there really wasn't much left to do by the end. Mastiff flips Wolfgang to counter a full Nelson. Pardon me. Wolfgang hits a nice wasteland, which looks great, as does his howling. And the height he gets on the howling is just, for a man of his size, wow. A Mastiff wins with Into the Void. That's it. It's too short to mean absolutely anything. And even worse, it made Wolfgang look weak. You need Gallus to be built strong now. You know, there's more factions, male factions, coming into NXT UK. There's British Strong Style, who are already established as the faction to beat. You've got Walter's new faction, which is making a splash on the scene. You've got Gallus. I'm sure there'll be another one along somewhere at some point. So you don't want Gallus to look weak in the middle of British Strong Style and Imperium, which is Walter's newest faction. I just felt like little care was given to this. I know Dave Mastiff had to go over to maintain the winning streak, but I felt like Wolfgang deserved a little bit better here. He was over with the crowd. He did very good here, but, you know, it just wasn't to be. And 4 minutes isn't enough. They needed 6 to 8 more minutes at least to make this count. And for a main event as well, 4.5 minutes for your main event. Why don't you just piss on all of us and have done with it? Rads is in the ring after. He goes to interview Dave Mastiff, but Gallus attack. They lay out Mastiff. Wolfgang hits the howling, and the episode ends as the crowd are chanting, "We are Gallus." We did get a little bit after this. We got another highlight package of Pete Dunne versus Walter from TakeOver New York. And then we just saw everything leading up to it. You know, the crossed words, Pete Dunne asking for his rematch. And then we get a little bit from each man at the end. Pete Dunne says that after 685 days of holding the title, he wants it back. Walter tells him that, he asks him even, "Do you want to do this again?" "No problem, let's make history again." And Pete Dunne tells Walter the title's coming home to the Bruiserweight. End of episode. I mean, it was what it was. After a really good episode 42, this was just by the numbers, mostly. It debuted Dragunov in a strong light, so you can't be down on it for that. But as far as the matches go, I wanted more from Jordan Devlin versus Ligero. I'm a very hard mistress to please when it comes to NXT UK, because I hold this brand to higher standards. It has to make a name for itself, and so to do that, you really have to produce good television, and it's just not sometimes. It's a good hour of weekly TV, it just could be better. Opening match was a squash, Dragunov was a squash, there was a hell of a lot of talking in between, which I hate. Ligero versus Jordan Devlin was the best thing on the card, even though it needed more, and the main event was a piss take for me. So, if you are going to watch this episode back, watch Devlin versus Ligero. You could skip the rest of it. We'll be back with episode 44 and 45 after I've taken a drink. After this break, it's your guess as good as mine of what we're going to fill it with. Travis always finds something though. Maybe a Hall of Fame trailer. Maybe a Hibiki TMD trailer. Who knows? I will see you after this.
It is with tremendous honor that we here from Union Smack induct our picks as the greatest legends in the history of British and European wrestling, right here on the Union Smack Hall of Fame, put together by my co-host, the Maniac, Matt Tennant. Stay tuned in the coming weeks for the first batch of inductees right here on the Union Smack podcast.
And we are back on Union Smack. This is the last hurdle, the final leg, the last hurrah, if you want, for this NXT UK Omnibus. So I've kept you long enough, so without further ado, let's get into it, let's crack on. NXT UK episode 44 began with a video package for the main event of this episode, which is of course Walter versus Pete Dunne for the WWE United Kingdom Championship. Very good video package here. It was basically everything we'd seen at the end of episode 43. It went through the previous few weeks since Dunne lost the title to Walter. It went through him calling him out for a rematch. It had snippets of what Walter said at the end of episode 43, only this time it had the added bonus of the voiceover guy, who always adds prestige to these little video packages. What he said was, in the Big Apple, they battle for supremacy, but there could be only one. Now all eyes are focused on Scotland's epicentre. One man seeks redemption, the other knows only domination. It all goes down in Glasgow. Dunne versus Walter 2, WWE United Kingdom Championship. And just that little verbiage, tacked onto the beginning, it made all four elements, both competitors, the title, and the match itself, way more prestigious than maybe it would have been. I know they were riding high off of TakeOver New York, and people still remembered that match and expected that quality here. But if you hadn't seen it, if you didn't watch TakeOver New York and you only watched the NXT UK episodes or this was your first NXT UK experience, you'd have got the story from this. And when we say, like, Vince McMahon should take note of NXT and what it does, and what Triple H does with it, this is the sort of thing. If you put a great video package to the Universal Championship or the WWE Championship or even something as small as the Intercontinental or United States Championship, it would hype it a lot more and make it seem a lot more important than it actually is. So I hope this sort of mentality does finally roll over to the main roster, but we all know it probably won't. The first match of the night was Travis Banks versus Joseph Connors in the Fatal 4-Way qualifying match, and just the same gripe I had with Flash Morgan Webster. What has Joseph Connors done to deserve this? He's beaten Mike Hitchman, he's beaten Jack Stars, I think he beat another jobber at some point, and that's Joseph Connors' contribution to NXT UK. So I would very much like to know what merits Joseph Connors, the most boring man on the roster, hands down, by far, by a country mile, whatever you prefer to say, hands down the most boring man they employ. And that's going up against some stiff competition across the whole WWE board. Luckily, he was just cannon fodder for Travis Banks, who, by the way, had a lovely new red throw-over face cover. Very nice indeed. I just think that putting people like Joseph Connors and, like we said, Flash Morgan Webster, it just cheapens it. They've done nothing to deserve the chance to qualify. They've done nothing to deserve a championship opportunity. And now it just absolutely looks like they're throwing anyone in to fill a spot. And it's not on. It's not on. As for the match itself, slow and mediocre to start, sadly. Travis Banks dominates with a rear chin lock and his usual kicks. But then Joseph Connors takes over and it is utterly, utterly dull. Absolutely banal. I think it's now time to give up on him. I know they keep pushing him for some reason. He's not a star. He's never going to be a star in WWE. And the ship sailed. The horse is bolted. It's time to give up on Joseph Connors. He's had way too much time and he's done nothing with it. We're talking about, 2.5 years now? He's had 2.5 years on this brand, competing for what was WWE UK before, and he's just so dull. Absolutely horrible. The speed of this match picks up drastically towards the end, thank God. Makes it just about watchable. And Banks wins with the Kiwi Crusher. There's nothing here to write home about. There's nothing to shout about. Radzi, again, is in after the match. He interviews Travis Banks. He says to him that he's now the final man to qualify for the Fatal 4-Way number 1 contenders match in 2 weeks, and asks him how he fancies his chances. Now, his answer was, it was standard. There was nothing great about it, don't get me wrong. It wasn't hideous, but the look on his face, he started his answer off by saying, Joe Coffey injured me at the Royal Albert Hall. Now, let's bear in mind Joe Coffey is the hometown hero. This is a pro-Gallus crowd. They booed Travis Banks and they cheered Joe Coffey. And look on Travis Banks' face was like, why are you booing me? Surely he knew. Surely it was obvious to him from the reactions that wrestlers were getting all night against Gallus. Even Dave Mastiff got booed. Flash Morgan Webster was almost booed out the building. But to look at Travis Banks' face, it was like, I don't understand. It looked absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. He runs down Coffey. He runs down Jordan Devlin. He says he quite likes Dave Mastiff, actually. He's just a really big guy. And then he just basically goes on to say it'll be the Kiwi Buzzsaw that'll be the new number 1 contender. Didn't need this. This was not needed. Travis Banks is another one of those wrestlers who doesn't need a microphone in front of his face. He can do his talking in the ring. Next up was a Nina Samuels promo, another Nina Samuels show. She's in a director's chair in front of a mirror, as per, and she talks about Tony Storm. Again, I won't go over the whole promo because it's way too long. She says Tony Storm was the easiest puppet to manipulate. She didn't even have to ask for a title shot, and all she had to do was pick out one of Tony Storm's many weaknesses, and she requested the championship match on her behalf. I think Nina Samuels is going places. After seeing her main event match with Tony Storm on episode 45, which we'll get to in just a few minutes, she needs more work. The promo work is there. She comes off as a right cocky bitch. But then she steps into the ring, and against wrestlers of greater quality, her flaws are beginning to show. We get a video, a highlight video actually, of Mark Andrews versus Noam Dar from 2 months ago. The injury that occurred in Coventry. The botch by, I mean, people are saying it's a Mark Andrews botch, but actually, looking back at it, it's a Noam Dar botch. He doesn't jump at the right time, and Andrews goes crashing into the back of his knee. Mark Andrews versus Noam Dar is next. That video package was to highlight what had happened, fill people in who didn't know or had forgot, and to build their rematch. And to call it a rematch, it's a bit of a stretch. It's a bit of a stretch to call it a rematch. This is 5.5 minutes long, and honestly, it starts with a great beginning, and it picks up where the last match left off. But you just get the overwhelming feeling with this, that all they do here is what they didn't get to do in their last match because of the injury. There's absolutely nothing else here. It's like Noam Dar reverses an enziguri into an ankle lock, and then feigns another knee injury to throw Mark Andrews off the scent. It's just, they incorporated the injury into the end of the match, but this was absolutely just everything they didn't get in to the last match. The last 5 minutes of the last match 2 months later, that's basically what you're looking at here. So Dar feigns a knee injury, Mark Andrews turns his back, Dar attacks him from behind and hits him with the Nova Roller for the win. This needed 10 more minutes at least. Their first match was an absolute classic. If you've not seen it, go back and watch it because it is absolutely brilliant. This is just a poor excuse for a sequel. A poor excuse for a sequel and to finish what they started. Radzi is lurking backstage like some fucking stalker again. He catches the grizzled young veterans coming into the arena, and for once, James Drake speaks. They're asked about Moustache Mountain issuing them a challenge, wanting the rematch for the NXT UK Tag Team Championships. And James Drake asks if it's a popularity contest, if it's NXT UK's Got Talent. And then thankfully, Zach Gibson takes over because James Drake is not a natural on the mic, and you can see why Gibson is the mouthpiece for the team. So Gibson says that he's sure everyone in Glasgow would love an opportunity at the Tag Team Championships, but they don't make the matches, Moustache Mountain don't make the matches, and they decide when they wrestle and who they wrestle. And then there was a nice little bit there where Gibson just berated Radzi, which I could listen to all day. Rhea Ripley comes out, because there's not nearly enough talking on this wrestling show already. She's got a new Titantron, a new entrance video, which looks very, very good. This is to build the Rhea Ripley versus Piper Niven match, which would have happened in Glasgow had Ripley been able. I don't recall it happening on episodes 46, 47, I think 48 are coming from Glasgow as well before they get to the Download Festival. Ripley was injured a few months ago. They thought it would only be 8 weeks out on the shelf with a foot injury. It turned into a lot longer than that after she wrestled in Brooklyn at WrestleMania weekend and did more damage to her ankle. And so she's out for a lot longer now. This match will happen. It will most likely happen at the Download Festival. If she's not cleared to compete, then it's going to be Plymouth. And so we'll have been waiting the majority of the year thus far just for this one match. And it's fine. Going into it, what's been put into it is fine. The promos, etc. I'd just like to see something more. If Rhea Ripley wasn't cleared to compete, then she could have done an attack angle in the back. That would have said more than this promo did. She walked to the ring perfectly fine. Wasn't clear to compete, as far as I know. But, she could have attacked Piper Niven in the back and set something else up, because it's all a bit tame at the minute, if I'm being honest. Cassius Ohno, after last week, is backstage and he's looking for Johnny Saint and Sid Scala. There's a whole thing where he just commandeers the cameraman before they finds them. So, it's not very interesting at all. He gets to their office, he knocks on the door, he lets himself in. Only Sid Scala's there because Johnny Saint was not present for the Scottish tapings, for the Glasgow section of NXT UK. And Sid Scala basically tells him he wants an opportunity to prove that he's the greatest at British wrestling. And in a lovely condescending way, Cassius Ohno just sits there and grins at Sid Scala. And just, of course, yeah. He just... It's wonderful to see. You have to watch it. I can't explain it. And then he tells him that next week he'll have Gentleman Jack Gallagher. Which, to me, completely just makes last week and this pointless. Was the whole point of this not Cassius Ohno's anger that he wasn't one of the 8 men chosen to compete in the Fatal 4-Way qualifiers? And to be fair, you had Flash Morgan Webster who didn't belong there, and you had Joseph Connors who didn't belong there. I'd have liked to have seen another match between Travis Banks and Cassius Ohno. That would have made more sense, considering Ohno has been on this destructive streak since joining NXT UK. But again, what do we know? So, Sid Scala sets that match up for next week, Ohno versus Gallagher, and that's the end of this segment, really. A little more condescending on Cassius Ohno's part, and then he leaves. The main event of this show, Walter versus Pete Dunne for the United Kingdom Championship. And what can you say? It's another great match. It doesn't quite reach their Takeover Classic level, sadly. But then again, it is for television. And this wasn't very long at all after Takeover. I think a week and a bit. Maybe a little bit longer, 2 weeks, something like that. And they did have a lot more to do, in these tapings. So it did feel slightly like they were holding something back. But nonetheless, this was a great, great spectacle. It's really odd seeing Pete Dunne without that title after nearly 2 years. It's even odder seeing it on Walter. But finally, they've given Walter his own side plates, which they didn't give him in New York. This has big match feel about it. Pete Dunne just straight off the bat, straight to the fingers, snapping them away. Walter trying to, chop him away, just like he's a pesky little fly. Walter hard-hitting chops, the boots, you can hear every connection. And it literally sounds like he's chopping away Pete Dunne's career. It's like chop after chop after chop. It's just horrible to listen to. He looks like the dominant monster as well, Walter. You can't get away from that. And he uses everything in his power, in his arsenal. He uses his sheer strength just to counter anything Pete Dunne tries to do, including a wicked, wicked clothesline to, counter a bitter end, which looked like it almost took Pete Dunne's head off. However, what I did like about Walter's performance here, and he's growing on me, I will never believe he's the greatest wrestler in the world, like people say, but he is growing on me as a performer because of what he's put into these matches and the respect he's shown the title, at least. I liked the fact that, unlike Takeover, where he looked like he was struggling to beat the champion before he eventually did pin Pete Dunne. But here he looked like he was absolutely on the edge of losing the title. He conveyed the despair of a champion looking down at the loaded barrel of a gun really well. So, props to him for that. Pete Dunne is just relentless. He comes across as a man who wants his title back. He relentless on the fingers. He even uses the tape for a split second. Walter's finger tape. He locks him in an octopus stretch and uses the finger tape to pull back the fingers before nailing Walter with a crucifix bomb. That looks amazing. Knocks him down with one forearm, which looked like it rattled Walter. And then we got into the final stretch of the match, which was almost a repeat of the ending to TakeOver. Walter goes up top. Pete Dunne actually super kicks the already sore fingers of Walter, brings him crashing down, applies the triangle armbar on the top rope, and this at TakeOver is where he lost the title, when Walter powerbombed him from the top rope and then hit a flying splash. Walter goes for the powerbomb again. He breaks the triangle armbar, gets done up for the powerbomb, and then, as he's coming off the top rope in an absolutely wonderful moment, Pete Dunne reverses the powerbomb into a Hurricane Rana for an absolutely breathtaking near fall. Incredible sequence. You have to see it if you haven't already. Dunne hits a German, Walter hits a clothesline, Pete Dunne counters the splash, which cost him the title at TakeOver, with a forearm, hits a bitter end, but his mistake, he doesn't go for the pin. Instead, he immediately transitions into the triangle, into the mount, wishbone snap on Walter's fingers, and before Walter can really tap out, Fabian Eichner runs down, pushes the bottom rope towards Walter so he can get his foot on it to break the hold. And then Marcel Barthel sneaks in and cracks Pete Dunne with the title, allowing Walter to powerbomb him for the victory. And it was a very good match. A well done ending as well. It was a screwy ending, fine. But as them three posed together at the end of the match over Pete Dunne's fallen body, it was a much needed character development for Walter, because not only did he have a new faction, and let's not kid ourselves, Barthel and Eichner, as good as they are, they absolutely need Walter right now. So they're going nowhere in the tag team division because there's nothing for them to do. So this feud with British Strong Style, this union with Walter, will do them, just the power of good. And I hope it continues. However, what I did like is that Walter came across as scared. Like he needed the help to beat Pete Dunne and retain the title because he didn't think he could do it on his own. And that's a very, very good character trait. And it's very brave to really exploit that this early on in his run with NXT UK. I would have expected him to wait another 6 months until the challenges came on thick and fast. But they went with it here, and it really pays off. Really pays off. And it also leaves the door open for a potential third match. A third and final match for Pete Dunne versus Walter. If that is going to happen, it surely has to be loser leaves NXT UK as a way to send Pete Dunne on his way, either up to NXT or, God forbid, a demotion to the main roster. So, NXT UK episode 44, it was a one-match show. It was always going to be a one-match show after the title match was announced. Dunne versus Andrews was very disappointing. The opener was very disappointing. Both matches just felt they were there to pad a card that had something bigger on the way. However, if you've not seen it already, Pete Dunne versus Walter is a must-see. So go and check that out, and you can probably skip the rest of the episode. And on we go with the final part of this Omnibus review. I realise we've been here a while, so let's rattle through this as quick as possible. NXT UK episode 45. We began with a recap of Pete Dunne versus Walter from the end of episode 44, and the the bringing together of Walter's new faction. Speaking of the Devil, Walter, Barthel and Eichner, all three of them out to begin the episode, and all three look very, very good standing against that white screen, silhouetted. Very nice. As they stood in the ring, ready to talk, there was a chorus of boos, a chorus of "We Want Done" chants, and a nice little moment where every time Marcel Barthel went to speak, they just stopped him with boos so loud he could hardly hear himself. When he did, him and Eichner, they just basically talked about they want to restore the honour and the professionalism of the sport. Pete Dunne could only get them so far, and British strong style has expired. Walter then took over in his brokenish English and said that the mat is sacred, and from this day forth they shall be known as Imperium. That's as far as they got before Pete Dunne's music hit, and him and Moustache Mountain came out, and all 6 men brawled. And there was a very weird ending to this brawl, like a very, very weird ending, because the cameraman got knocked over, and I'm pretty sure it was effects they added afterwards, but there was a staticky sound, and then it cut to like a pre-TV screen before the programme start, all the coloured bars. And then we came back and we were on our side. The view was on the side, and then it static again, back to the coloured bars, and then it just cut out. And it was very eerie. It was a very eerie ending to this segment. Very well done, but very, very, very eerie. Radzi is backstage with Sid Scala. They talk about what they've just seen in the ring, and Sid Scala says that as these two groups cannot be kept apart, him and Johnny Saint, the mysterious Johnny Saint, who's not put in an appearance in 4 weeks, have decided that in 2 weeks' time, Imperium versus British Strong Style will happen. 6-man tag team match. Can't wait for that. That will be covered in next month's NXT UK Omnibus review. Mark Coffey and Wolfgang versus Carlos Romo and A-Kid. And for those who don't know, Romo and Kid are Spanish competitors. They've competed as Team White Wolf across the world. They've had 5-star matches with British Strong Style, with the Lucha Brothers, who it is said after they fought, fans just threw money into the ring. So I think with them coming up, with who else do we have? Stoker and Howley, of course, The Hunt. You know, the tag team division in NXT UK, it's not only looking stacked, but it's beginning to build for when the bigger teams like Moustache Mountain move on. So very, very much looking forward to that. As for this match, basic squash. Kid and Romo got in some offense, but it wasn't much. There was a nice slingshot schoolboy on Mark Coffey by Romo, but that's about all they got. Gallus win with a pop-up power slam and standing enziguri combo. Radzi is with Zaya Brookside backstage. This is another woman who needs the microphone taken away from her. Just stop. It's like it's painful to listen to her now. Radzi asks her about 2 weeks ago when Ginny left her. No, sorry, when Killer Kelly left her to the mercy of Ginny and Jazzy Gabbert. She talks about Rhea Ripley, who is another big girl. She says that thought she could come in and pick on the smallest female in the women's division, which she did and won, so I don't get her point here. And that Ginny's trying to do the same thing. Then she's interrupted by Isla Dawn, who we haven't seen for Christ knows how long. I can't even remember the last time I saw Isla Dawn. It might have been in Blackpool. I'm pretty sure it was Coventry, but if not, it was most definitely in Blackpool. And Isla Dawn basically proposes an alliance between the two. Brookside accepts, and they walk off together. The man of 1,000 bores, Joseph Connors, is backstage, supposedly on his cell phone, mobile phone, whatever you call it, wherever you are in the world. And he's talking about Ilya Dragunov. He says that ever since it's been announced that Dragunov was coming to NXT UK, all he's heard is people claim that Ilya is the most physical, most intense man to ever step foot into an NXT UK ring. And then he says, when you find yourself stood across the ring from him, you'll see about that. It's nice to have a laugh, isn't it? I know Dragunov versus Collins is a match that we have coming up, and I don't. I mean, if Joseph Collins is the man to get Dragunov to the next level, to a upper mid card main event level in NXT UK, fine. But this had better be a one and done, because I don't want to see this as a proper feud, and I don't want to see this go any longer than it actually has to. Joseph Collins holds no interest for me whatsoever anymore. Cassius Ohno versus Jack Gallagher was next, and this was a wonderful technical wrestling match. Like, hark back to the days of Johnny Saint. They were trading wrist locks, they were trading headlocks, they were trading head scissors. They were finding, novelty ways to break out of each other's offense. And it was very good. And I loved the point where Cassius Ohno in the blink of an eye, he goes from professional European style to just absolutely fuck this, and just starts fighting dirty. It's a lovely transition to watch. He busts Jack Gallagher open with a vicious right hand, just whacks him straight in the face. Gallagher comes back with punches. Ohno is such a ruthless wrestler that you can't, even losing to him, you look really good. And I hope he sticks around. I know he's back in NXT as well now, and he can do both because they don't record at the same time. But I hope he sticks around in NXT UK, because he's doing those that beat him a lot of good, and he's making those that lose to him look very strong. So I think that has to continue for now. Gallagher counters a rolling elbow with the Mancunian nod, works over Ohno's arm a bit, and then he hits him with a second Mancunian nod, and Cassius Ohno just falls on him, just smash. It looks painful. And Ohno wins with the rolling forearm. There's a little bit of controversy here, which says a second match, could be on the cards and wouldn't be unwelcome, actually. Gallagher's legs under the rope as the ref counts, but the referee doesn't see it, awards the match to Ohno, and Cassius pulls Gallagher's leg back into the ring before the referee can see it after the match. Good match. You must see this. If you're a fan of British European style of wrestling, if you're a fan of Johnny Saint, then this is the match for you, because this would have fit perfectly on World of Sport in the late 70s. So, very well done to both men. Piper Niven is backstage on media duties, because we've not seen enough people on media duties, or heard, nearly enough fucking promos over the last 4 episodes. Luckily, it's a very, very short one. They don't want you to know it's Radzi because he stood out a shot, but it's clearly Radzi who asks about Rhea Ripley. She tells her what Rhea Ripley said, and she basically challenges Rhea Ripley to a fight. So I believe that is coming soon, and will be one of the main attractions at the Download Festival. If it has happened in Glasgow and I've missed it somewhere, then apologies, but I'm pretty sure I didn't read it. And so we've still got that to look forward to after, 4 months maybe? If not longer by the time it happens. Finally, we get to the main event of the show, and the end of this omnibus. I'm sure you're all starting to whine like I am. Toni Storm versus Nina Samuels for the NXT UK Women's Championship. Now, just a little note on this. Toni Storm is one of the greatest women's wrestlers in the world today. Yet her reign has entered 4 months now, as I record this at the end of May. And it's been mostly forgettable. I don't feel like she's done anything of note with the title. I don't feel like they've given her the best material to work with. She's had Rhea Ripley. That didn't work out very well at all. Who else has she had? She's had Ginny. That was a decent match, but the storyline could have gone longer to make something more of it. She defended the title against Bianca Belair and I think it was Nikki Cross at Worlds Collide. That was fine. And then this, so 4 months in, her reign should be on fire by now. People should be as fiercely protective of it as we were with Pete Dunne's title reign. But right now, it's just very lukewarm. It could go either way. It could last another 6 months and turn into something really spectacular, or it could end next month, and I don't really think many people would care, if I'm being honest with you. This match, Storm starts serious after what Samuel said about her sister, and about her mother. Nina controls the majority of it. As I said earlier, plays the cocky bitch well. She dominates with neck snap kicks, armbar and chinlock combo. However, she never really looks like she's capable of winning the title. And that's where this match, it falls down, sadly. It's decent enough. It's not main event quality, not in my opinion. Nina Samuels, and this goes back to what I was saying right at the beginning of the review, Nina Samuels needed bigger names to beat. Because you looked at her here, and you looked at her in-ring ability, and she didn't look like she could beat Toni Storm. You never believed it. Had she beat 3 or 4 bigger names beforehand, then you would have believed it. And coming out of that, there was little urgency to the bout, because Nina Samuels knew, as the crowd did, that she wasn't going to win. Toni Storm was just collecting the paycheck. And I don't want to say that about Toni Storm, because there was an effort here. But that's what it was. She was collecting the paycheck in this match. And it just hampered the match. It felt like an opener or a mid-card match rather than a main event. Just another day in the office for Toni Storm. Samuels did do a nice springboard corkscrew splash. Toni Storm tried to look like she was struggling against Samuels to a degree, but it never really came across that well. And Nina Samuels did an inside cradle that is as ugly as the woman you'd wake up with after a heavy night out. Seriously, it was absolutely fucking disgusting. Nice butterfly backbreaker by Samuels. Her overacting is painful. Just like Toni Storm's got to smarten up her promo technique, Nina Samuels has got to work on the acting in the match. It's just absolutely excruciating. Excruciating to the point I had to look away through part of it. And then Toni Storm wins with a Storm Zero. It was a flat ending. And all of the endings to her matches have been very flat. Takeover, flat. The rematch against Rhea Ripley, completely flat. Even the match against Ginny, the ending was flat. There's something about the Storm Zero that they don't build up to it properly. It should be 9 out of 10 times. It should be hit after a chain of reversals. No, it should be reversal, 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 caught you, Storm Zero, ending. But it's not. It's just Toni Storm. Usually it's after a few German suplexes. This time it was after... It looked like DDT suplexes to me. She did a few of them, hit her with a Storm Zero, and it was done. It really needs a better lead-in to the Storm Zero. Otherwise it's going to continue to feel flat when she wins, and that's not doing her or her matches any good at all. Nina Samuels, on the other hand, she's just not ready. There was a hope that she would be after the weeks of build, and she didn't look too bad against Casey Owens, but her flaws really showed here. Against better opposition, in a spotlight that could have made her. And would have made her had she put on a better performance. She tried, but it's not there yet. So she needs to now go to the back of the queue. It's time for Ginny to step up once again. And maybe we'll revisit Nina Samuels as challenger again in 6 months, 3 years' time. Right now, though, she's not ready. As far as the episode goes, Cassius Ohno versus Jack Gallagher was the standout match of the night. If you're a Tony Storm fan, you'll want to see the main event, even though it's not as great as people said it was live. And NXT UK episode 45 is not a must-see. And that brings a close to the end of this NXT UK Omnibus. The end of this week's Union Smack. You can all breathe a massive sigh of relief. And to the end of our 2-year anniversary. It wasn't a special. I'm sure we'd have liked to have done, a long old special for you. Going over some old events, maybe some memories we both had. But unfortunately, Travis couldn't be here. But I know he'd echo these sentiments when I say that the last 2 years doing this podcast have been 2 of the best years of my life, to be honest. Before this podcast came along, I wasn't very confident at all. I could never think about doing something like this. And then Rocky introduced me to Travis, and here we are 2 years later. I think it's safe to say this podcast has given me confidence. It's given me back a creative edge that I was very sorely missing at the time. And it's made me see that actually I can probably do anything I put my mind to. So I can't thank you and Travis, anyone listening, and anyone who's ever, been on air with us enough, because you've all done me the world and the power of good. But more than that, and Travis said this on Twitter when I pointed out to everyone that it was our 2nd year on air. Travis said it's given him a best friend, and I echo those sentiments absolutely. This podcast has given me a friend that I never knew existed 2 years ago. But it's given me a best friend. It's given me a friend for life. And I am exceedingly, exceedingly grateful for that. And, on behalf of Travis, on behalf of, myself, on behalf of everyone who's ever worked on Union Smack, we'd just like to thank you. Thank you for sticking with us for 2 years, because we still have the very same fan base that joined us on this journey 2 years ago. You've stuck with us, and, we've built the community. We have more fans now than we could ever have imagined having when we began this. And in 2 years, your support has been amazing. The views, the listens, the merchandise buy-in, even the ideas some of you have pitched to us, even the little comments, you give us down below, or you contact us on Twitter with, they all mean the world, and we couldn't and wouldn't have wanted to do it without you. So, on behalf of myself and Travis, thank you very much indeed, and also thank you to Travis for giving me this platform, because without him I'd have never have done this at all. There's a lot of people to thank for this podcast and for what we have. Rocky and Logan are 2 of them, but Travis is his channel, and he very kindly let me have a platform to vent my frustrations and vent my views when there was nowhere else. So thank you very much, Travis. And that's it. I didn't prepare a speech. I just got lost in the moment there. So thank you very much for listening for this episode and for the past 2 years. Me and Travis will be back together next time. The band will be back together at last. Until then, you can find me on Twitter at The Perfect Tenant. You can find Travis on Twitter at the Hibiki TMD. You can buy our merchandise, the official Union Smack shirts, the official Hibiki TMD shirt, the official Reset Button shirt at unionsmack.bigcartel.com. More merchandise to come throughout the year as we hit summer. And also, give the channel a look. If you've not subscribed, do so. If you've not liked, do so. If you've not commented, do so. We appreciate everything you do. Do go and watch our Hall of Fame special. There will be more of that to come in the next few weeks. And just, once again, thank you very much indeed. Until next time, as always, cheerio.